All right, we are here live, and here I mean in the middle of nowhere, because I am in my van. So this is the background. If you see this background, you can know I'm on a van trip, doing some kind of random adventure. I'm here next to a hiking trail. Anyway, but we are here for the unscripted conversation about mental health, where we chat about mental health issues, and we are open to chatting about any mental health issues. And you can feel free to comment in the comments and chat it up to ask your mental health questions. Hopefully, we'll get people logged on and we'll start talking about mental health issues. Otherwise, I'll just do my best to chat about mental health things that I can think about. So when it comes to the general unscripted mental health chat things, one thing that I like to let people know about is that I try not to call you out. Like, I won't be like, oh, that's Jeff, Mazzarelli. But I do that. I don't call people out because I'm trying to keep it as ambiguous in case people are trying to be anonymous. But with that said, we can't actually assure confidentiality because this is a online thing. So not confidential, but happy to discuss questions. And you can always do that trick that no one ever sees through, where you say asking for a friend. No one knows that's really just you. Okay, so mental health questions and chats. I had an interesting conversation today with why are you so good looking? Asking for a friend. Oh, that's very sweet. The beauty is in the eye of the beholder, and everybody has different tastes. And thank God, because if everyone was attracted to the same kind of person, then it would be even worse. Oh, thanks for the like, whoever gave me a like, when it comes to the disparity of attraction. Although it is interesting, because this was kind of brought up, I guess, by the chat, although I'm stretching here a little bit, but when they asked women to rate men, they showed a bunch of average pictures, like a bunch of random pictures of men. And they rated apparently 80% of the men as less attractive than average. Whereas when men were shown random pictures of random women, they had about the right distribution. So like 50% of the women they thought were more attractive than average, and 50% were less attractive for average. And obviously it changed who was attracted somewhat. But I think it's interesting that women thought 80% of men were less than average of good looking for men. And you can chat amongst yourselves and discuss what that possibly means about the differences in psychology of the individuals. But that's what the data showed for at least that study. Okay, so I'm on this little van life trip and touring around, and I met a coffee shop guy named Micah, and I'll maybe even shout out, it's Lake City, where it's called, what's the coffee shop's name? I didn't plan on shouting it out, but it's like, it starts with an X. It's the only good coffee shop in Lake City. Yeah, I should have looked this up. I hate looking things up while I'm trying to keep the chat exciting. But anyway, he's a very cool guy. We had a great conversation about a lot of different stuff. And one of the things we talked about was kind of like going through and understanding how you are best living your life as an individual, and how like sometimes we go through like middle school where we're all and why middle school matters, why that's like a good time period to think back to, is because of puberty. So we're all going through these physical changes where we're going from childhood to post-puberty, I'll say, at least. And it feels awkward, and you're not really sure who you are. You're not really sure how to function. And so the safest route is to conform. to be as normal as possible. It's also the period where there's kind of like this socialization effect where there's trying to kind of normalize a little bit. And some of that isn't terrible, but I think at a whole, it kind of does end up having a negative effect because we end up developing these insecurities in that time period, or at least a lot of people do, that are actually the things that will help them be most successful in life. Because the things that get made fun of the most in puberty are the things that specialize you. They're the things that actually are what's unique about you, and when you can later develop a niche for that thing. So later, all the rest of your life, right? All the years later, that is far more than middle school. Those things about you that you're mocked most in middle school are usually the things that other people are attracted to you, the other things you can make into a career, things that are fascinating about you. And yet people wear those things that are so awesome about them, like a scarlet letter, like a mark of shame because of how much they're insulted and how they internalize and make it part of their story in middle school. Now, of course, being in middle school at like 11, 12 years old, you don't have the emotional maturity to think of different stories. And even more so if people have gone through trauma younger in life, then you can't think of alternatives. Like one of the exercises I do with some of my clients is when something happens and they come up with a story of what it means. So someone's mean to them and they say, well, it's because this and this, right? Whatever that story is, we'll do this exercise of thinking of alternatives, right? What's an alternative of why that person might have done what they did that isn't aligned with that story, right? Is there anything else that still fits the facts of the event, but with a different storyline? And the point of that is not to find the right storyline, but to find how powerful our stories can be to develop that line of thinking. So we're in doing that, realizing that I could tell this story in a way that's negative reflection of me, that's a negative reflection on them, that is just focusing on circumstances. I mean, not to get this could get political quick, talking about the different forms of therapy, but like in the different forms of therapy, there's internal locus of control and external locus of control. Simply said, there are some forms of therapy that focus on how the system is affecting you, and others of how, you are taking responsibility and how much, the control is on you. And, but there's strengths and weaknesses with both. But there's one form of therapy in particular that is entirely external focus, entirely looking at the systems. And don't get me wrong, I think there's many flaws in that form of therapy, but that's a narrative that makes sense. Like it fits the facts. If you always are looking at, like, it could slip into victim mentality and it could be, a problematic for sure. And if somebody had that, I might challenge them to say, what are things that, like, owning your part can be really good? This is where nuance matters and flexibility matters, because owning your part and knowing how what you did influenced the things can be really good. But there are other people that are like over responsible, so they're constantly blaming themselves, and it might be helpful for them to look at the way it might have not been their fault. Maybe the person that is reacting that way is going through things that are completely unrelated to them. And this goes back to, in my own narrative therapy tools and understanding the stories that we develop, what I call the fake story, which is filter, attract, and condition. Hey, welcome to the chat. So filter, attract, and condition. And I know it's FAC, right? Those are an acronym that I'm spell out fake story for a reason that is more meaning based. The grammar Nazis might complain of, that's not how you spell fake. But that story is how we keep a thing alive, an idea alive, even if the evidence is going a different direction. So, for instance, back in middle school when we're getting bullied, well, I'll give you one that actually relates to me. I think my nose and ears had grown quite sizable at a very young age, but my face, the rest of my head hadn't caught up yet. So I did have a fairly big nose and a fairly big face or ear for the rest of my face. And so I was called Dumbo by some people. And I carried that with me for the longest time, that I was like, I look hideous because I've got a big nose and big ears. And eventually people started telling me that I didn't, and that was weird, that my nose and ears were perfectly proportionate. And I hadn't been called Dumbo in a long time, but I carried that story with me until it was attacked again and again and again. And so how do we keep those stories alive? Well, we filter out all the people that are telling us a different story. We filter in all the times that people are making fun of us. We attract people that will make fun of our physical appearance because that's what we're used to and are comfortable with. And then when people don't, we condition, and sometimes very subtly, we condition them to keep treating us in the manner that we are used to. My go-to example for the conditioning effect is if somebody gives you a gift, what they want to see is you, like, say it's a shirt. They want to see you wear that shirt. And the more you wear it, like, you can wear a gift out and people are very happy because they know that you really appreciated it. And of course, thanking them and like making a big deal about it. Like, I gave a gift to my brother's family, really just like kind of the whole family. But my sister-in-law, thanks for another thumbs up. Got another thumbs up. Still, by the way, anytime you guys can question, I always put the questions in the chat as a more of a priority than whatever I'm talking about. So if you have questions, feel free to anytime in the chat. But anyway, I got these gifts for my sister-in-law to basically distribute however she wanted to in the family. She sent me videos of the kids like opening the presents and like made it into such a big deal that I was like immediately wanting to do it again and wanting to give more and more money so she could buy more gifts in the future. Like, there's no question that as long as I can afford it, I'm going to be giving them gifts, because she wasn't doing this out of manipulation. She just was a really good gift receiver, way better than I am at receiving gifts. That conditioned me to want to give more. At the same time, we do the opposite with when we reject a gift, right? When somebody gives us a gift and we act, oh, what weird, or we don't acknowledge it, or we even dismiss it. No, that's stupid, right? And you go like, wait, who would do that when they receive a gift? Well, there are people that would absolutely do that when they receive a gift, because that's what happens when somebody gives you a compliment and you reject it. Someone's like, you look great today. And you're like, oh, no, I look disgusting. I'm fat. I'm a slob. Oh, you can't, I look so old, or whatever it is. It's like you just actually condition them to no longer want to compliment you. You actually reinforced a negative image of you, and you ask them, whether you realize it or not, to continue to insult you and put you down and to never honor you or lift you up. You're saying, please don't ever compliment me again. Please treat me like dirt. I feel more comfortable being treated like dirt. And what happens is, and I see this with couples counseling a lot, that there will be a couple that's been married for 20 years, 30 years. And the one partner will be like, my spouse never compliments me. And I'll see it even modeled before me, that when the spouse does compliment them, they either filter it out and don't pay any attention to it, or they actually condition the spouse not to compliment because they actually insult the compliment, right? By questioning it, by challenging it. I don't believe you. I'm not really smart. Now, at the same time, I will say, On the other side of it, if you are giving someone a compliment and they're responding that way, try not to go into this conditioning. So try to keep complimenting them and give it time, because people sometimes have such negative self-images that they need to kind of get used to being honored and loved and complimented. And there's a cheat code. I was talking about did some hiking with Ripley, and we did some little R&R videos. And one of my thing was talking about love, and how love is this internal feeling that should naturally be expressed into actions. But if those actions are not heard or received by the person that we're trying to give them to, does it even really matter? And I was talking about how what we should do more as mature individuals wanting a healthy relationship, whether romantic or friendship, is get comfortable expressing our needs and wants. Get comfortable saying what we're actually really looking for. And when we find people that are safe to actually express, like, this is what I really need, and this is what really feeds me, and whatever that is, and they do their best to give it to us because they know it feeds us, because they know it's a way we can receive love. That's great. What we fall into is this attitude of like, well, they should already know, or if I ask for it and then they give it to me, it's not really out of a genuine place. Hey there, uh, is this hey, is it the Micah that I met? I don't usually call people out on, the thing, but is this the Micah from the coffee shop? Because I literally was talking about the coffee shop, if this is you. So, I was talking about our conversation. Part of it is awesome. Hey, what's the name of your coffee shop? Because I wanted to shout out, your coffee shop. It's a beautiful little coffee shop, uh, Lake City, and we had a great conversation. So, um, let people know. Yeah, see, I knew it started with an X. Expo. Where did the name come from? But yeah, if you are ever in Lake City, it's got one of the largest waterfalls in Florida, which is not saying much because it's a small little waterfall. If it rains a lot, it's better, but it's never a huge waterfall, but it's a nice little city. And Expa is great. Yeah, we were talking about learning to just love and appreciate the best version of yourself. It's Greek and it means joy. That fits. It's a joyous place to be, and you definitely are a man of joy. You can exude joy everywhere you go. So I was talking about love and you know being able to express how you can best receive love and how that should be normalized, instead of falling into this trap where you think, if I say how I want to be loved and then they do it, they're just doing it out of a sense of obligation. That's a very dangerous narrative. And in normalizing this mature version of love that we communicate, the cheat code is our words. The cheat code is communication. So you can, say, so if someone says, "Oh man, you look so beautiful today," and they go, "Oh no, I look hideous. I'm disgusting. You know, I've got all these whatever problems with my physical appearance." Your cheat code, you can say, "I understand that. I've had a lot of insecurities in my own life, but I want you to be able to receive my compliments. I want you to be able to receive my love and support for you, because I think it's really important and it's true. This is how I see you. This is the reflection of the beauty that you have in my eyes. So I know your natural inclination is to reject that, but I really want to be able to keep loving you." And thanks for the other thumbs up, whoever gave me the next thumbs up. Is that okay? Can I do that? And ask for permission. Could I love you in the way that I believe you deserve to be loved? And, I think in my experience, most people will say yes. Now, if they say no, it really makes me uncomfortable, and I'd rather you just not compliment me at all, then just do it anyway. No, I'm just kidding. Respect their agency. You know, people have to live their life. They have to be able to make their own shots and call the way that they want to live their life. Now, I think that's a sad way to live their life. I think, it's like I'm around people all the time that bash each other and think it's funny and like tear each other down or ultra competitive and kind of nasty. And look, that's totally fine if that's the way you want to live your life. You're just not probably going to be my inner circle. You can still be in my circle, but you're not going to be my closest community. My closest community is going to be supportive and encouraging. Now, if you're married to this person, that might be a little bit of a different story. You might want to say, okay, what is a way that I can love you? Because I need to be able to express love for you for it to be able to grow. Because in the end, there's a great metaphor with lakes, that lakes become dead and stagnant and they get filled with all this kind of nastiness if they don't have a way to pour in and a way to pour out. We need that to be able to flow. So no matter how much, affection I have for someone, if it's not given this natural flow out, if I'm not having some healthy way of expressing my love for another person, then eventually it's going to get stagnant. It's going to get nasty, right? So we need a way to be loved, and we need to love a way to love others, which in therapy, one of the terms we use is incongruent. So if there's not a congruency, if there's not a thing that like it's aligned and it all makes sense, there's a problem. And so even if it's like, I'm really loving to people, but I'm not really allowing them to be loving to me in the same way, that would be an incongruency. So that's immediately going to be a problem. And we want to be like psychologically curious of like, okay, if that's the case, why is it? Why are there this disconnect from you being really happy to receive love, or happy to give love, but not happy to receive it, right? Or vice versa, right? Does that make sense? So in any way, when we're trying to get in that healthy and mature place, we want to look at the way that we are conditioning people long term and how to treat us. So for me personally, there was a long time that I was really comfortable giving to others, not super comfortable receiving. I would get compliments, but I'd just dismiss them. Oh yeah, and it was an air of humility. So I came from a culture that really emphasized self-sacrifice and humility to the form that it was, for me personally, a negative influence. Now, there are many people that I think it would be a positive influence, because I think there's enough people that are driven more towards a high self-regard, driven more towards, thinking a lot of themselves. And so it's good to focus on humility again and again. But if you're somebody that is driven towards codependency, you're more of a people pleaser, then a heavy focus on humility can be a very negative thing for you, because you're already kind of naturally self-loathing. And I have a theory here. Now, this is my own theory that I can't necessarily defend or back up with evidence-based stuff. But I have not only the theory, I have some good, plausible reasons why. And my theory is that people used to struggle a lot more with self-pride, and now they struggle a lot more with self-loathing. Now, either way, that is a product of the self, right? Either way, it's ego. All right. But it is way different in my, again, theory now than it was thousands of years ago. Now, I didn't live thousands of years ago, and we don't have a lot of journals. We have some, but we don't have a lot of journals of like what people lived like thousands of years ago to know for a fact. But here's my theory on why. I think it's the internet. I think it's more than just that. I think it's like right now I can see my face in a way that would be really rare thousands of years ago. Oh, well, thank you. Thank you for the handsome compliment. But you might see it as handsome, and I do appreciate that, and I take that compliment. Oh, and thanks for the other thumbs up. But I see all that's wrong with my face in a way that if I didn't look at my face in a very like 4K resolution way, would have no idea that was even existed, right? It wouldn't even cross my mind. And I couldn't compare myself to all these people online. My go-to example is the one-arm pull-up, which my brother John Peter was able to accomplish when he was like 18, 19 years old. And I had never heard of it. I'd never seen anyone do it. He does a pull up, like literally, where's my arm? There it is. With one arm, right? It's technically a chin up, but anyway. So I had this goal in mind of being able to do the one arm chin up because my brother could do it. Eventually, one day I can do it. Now, I didn't have any of the natural gifts he did. He's really fast twitch, very lean build. So he's got a lot of muscle, but like skinny waist. And so he was really engineered for that thing. So I had to train for it. I had to do steps progressively to get to be able to do it. But eventually, years and years later, I was able to do the one arm chin up. Yay, me, right? So impressive. Then, because of online with YouTube and Instagram and all these things, there are so many people that can do not only the one arm chin up, the one arm pull up, they can do it with their legs still lifted. They can do it with extra weight attached. They can do it for like 10 reps, and they're doing it like it's nothing. And it was so hard for me to do it. It felt like when I first started watching videos of other people doing it that I was weak and pathetic, and like all of these negative images or messages started going in my mind. When still to this day, my one friend Joe, I think, has done it before, but like there's only one other person. So there's like 3 people in my life that I've ever seen do this in person. But there's so many people I've seen online. It's like now we're familiar with this 8 million or 8 billion people, the best of everything. And it can just really help us to fall into self-loathing and make us feel insignificant. So I think the reason why people struggle with self-worth so much is because you are so focused on all these other people doing all these things. Thank you for showing up in the chat. Better late than never. But I just heard a great piece of wisdom. You can't defeat an enemy using half measures. What does that mean to you? What does it using half measures mean to you? I'm curious in the chat. But yeah, so like that's my theory on why people struggle with self-worth so much. And I will say I'm biased because as a therapist, you deal with a lot more codependents than narcissists. And don't get me wrong, it's not like everyone falls into one or the other. Those are just the extreme ends of the spectrum. But narcissists rarely ever go to therapy because they think they're great at everything, even when they're horrible. And codependents often go to therapy because they think it's their fault, even when it's not. So if a codependent is struggling in life, they think it's because such a piece of trash and everything is wrong with them. So they're going to go to therapy to try to fix themselves. Whereas a narcissist thinks that it's the other person who's such a piece of trash and they don't need therapy because they're great. So I know there are more people that struggle with pride, and I always have to mention when it comes to true narcissist, it's debated. It's somewhere between 1% and 5% of the population. So it is less than people think it is. But there are, of course, people that are very prideful and very narcissistic out there. With that said, I still think like Scripture says that no one ever hated their own body, and I can't find anyone who doesn't hate something about their own body. Pretty much everyone I know has something in their own body. So it's like that to me alone is like good evidence. Psychological problems in today's society are far more common than they ever have been before. And even things like anxiety and depression, like anxiety um, is obviously something that is natural. It's something that can even be healthy, and we've had for thousands of years. But specifically persistent anxiety, I think, is far more common today than it ever has been before, because we have so many things that are stressful that are possibly going to happen. Got another thumbs up. Thank you for that. Feel free to come in the questions with chats, by the way. Another reminder of the chat questions. We have so many things that might happen in 3 months or a year, but might not. And that even mindset and thinking about those things thousands of years ago was really rare. You didn't have bills that were due in 3 months. You didn't have to worry about taxes and what were going to happen with tax reports. So that's what's really on, I think, with some of the anxiety problems that we have, is that our mind is designed for a different world than the one we live in. And similar depression. Like, think about this, how easy it is to slip in depression when it comes to life is so uncertain nowadays. Yeah, for sure. I mean, and there's a lot of things, even I'm talking about today versus thousands of years ago, but even today versus 10 years ago. Um, I live in America, which is a privilege because, like, I don't like, to me, one of the times I realized there was a privilege that I never thought about before is when I went into a grocery store and there weren't any eggs and there wasn't even much meat. And I'm like, this is bizarre. Like, what kind of dystopia do we live in the 2020s, which has now become far more common. It's not as bad as it was, but the food plethora that I've lived in my entire life started to diminish in that time period in a way that was like scary. And so that was another uncertainty. That's an uncertainty that is far more recent. And it's great if you can say "we" on a roller coaster with your hands up, but not everybody can. Because the anxieties that we're dealing with are not really the ones that we're designed to handle. So we are naturally so basically from a therapist standpoint, we have to build different mental tools to be able to handle these anxieties because we live in this modern world. Now I'm thinking about the lyrics to Shallow, but that's just me, so I can't help it, you know. Aren't you trying to live hardcore? Or do you need more? Is there something else you're searching for? Well, there is. And so one of the ways away from anxiety is by having a deeper understanding of purpose and looking at true meaning and learning how to control our spotlight, which is essentially our imagination. Imagination is the image in our head. So when we're dealing with anxiety or depression, I mean, depression, think about it. Like, if you didn't have photos and videos, you'd still, of course, remember people in your past, but you wouldn't get as stuck in them. Those memories are now deeper ingrained um, because of the fact that you are rehearsing them every time you look at something in a way that you really couldn't, even if you don't watch the videos anymore, right? The fact that you've watched them before, there was a time period you look back and you saw the pictures and videos and all this stuff from those memories, that has now become, now it's like you lived that twice, right? In a way that even recalling the memory in your mind doesn't have as much of an effect. So, and that's another thing is like I haven't even touched on in terms of images and things we've seen, all of the media in which we see. Isn't it easier to slip into anxiety when my capacity for faith is running low? What would be your capacity for faith? I think would be the question, right? Because I think it's, again, since anxiety is a product of the imagination, um, I think we always have the same capacity. I'm confused about the phrasing. Like, wasn't it anxiety that caused Peter to sink like the rock he is? Uh, Good wordplay of Peter being the rock. Yeah, so he looked at the wind and the waves and focused on that. And since that became his focus and his spotlight, that caused him to fall into those circumstances and sink. And in the same way, if we are focused on the things that we're anxious about. And one of the simple things, I actually did an R&R mental health video on this too. I filmed it today. I didn't post it. So I don't know when I'll post it. I post them kind of random times. So I film a bunch in a row and then post randomly. But is the Serenity Prayer's ability to separate good worry from bad worry? So if I'm a real good hint that I'm focusing on bad worry, if it's something that isn't actually in my control at all. So if it's something that I literally can't deal with because it's not in my capacity, it's not in my ability, it's like something that someone else may or may not do, it's not worth me focusing on. And so then, okay, it's like, cool, I've realized that it's bad worry. What do I do next? And there's a couple of things you could do. One could be like a positive thing, like you could practice gratitude. You could practice focusing on things that really matter and do more of those things. But that might be too hard if you're currently wired in the worry space. And so one thing that you can do to try to tell the worry part of your brain that you are being diligent, that you're being a good steward, is actually focusing on the worries that you can control. So let's use an example. We are in a situation where we don't have enough money to pay our bills, right? So we know that in a couple months, we're probably going to have huge consequences from not being able to pay our bills. And there's nothing I can do about those huge consequences because no matter what, I'm not going to be able to pay my bills. So it's bad worry focusing on that. But I can still say, wait a second, what can I control here? Well, I can't control the money I spend and the money I make, right? Some people, right? So sometimes it's like, I could do these extra things to make a little bit more money. And I could do these things to cut back on expenses. Now, a part of your brain is going to say, yeah, but it's not going to fix the problem that's coming in 3 months. It's like, yeah, but that's not the point. The point is to focus on the worry that you can actually manage and to start building momentum there. And if you start building momentum there, who knows what actually happens in the circumstances in that time. But even that isn't the point. The point is when you're focused on a persistent anxiety that's long-term that you can't control, it is a mental trap that makes you fall into depression, that like steals all of your capacity to move forward. So it's psychological cancer, and we want to get out of that mindset. And so best case scenario, we focus on gratitude, we focus on positivity, great. But if we're too wired towards the worry brain, we can then focus on the things that we, actually worry about but can control, right? So we're in a relationship and it's not going well. The person isn't happy and we're struggling with all of that. But ultimately, we can't control whether they're happy or not. That's got to be their choice. Happiness is something that happens between the ears. And so ultimately, a partner is as happy as they can choose to be, and they develop that skill. And I don't like saying happiness is a choice because it is a skill, right? And the difference between a choice and a skill is a choice is something you can always make. A skill is something you have to develop. So there are many times you're in a situation in your life that you cannot choose to be happy, now, but you can work to build that skill that eventually you'll have that choice, if that makes sense. All that to say, when we're working on trying to improve our relationship, if your goal is making your partner happy, you've now fallen into bad worry. You're trying to handle something that literally you cannot control. No matter what you do or do not do, they can still choose to be happy or not. They can have that skill to be happy, or they can still be miserable, right? So, what can I control? And processing that is the first step. Well, I can choose to be a good partner. Now you could say, well, I can choose to do everything I can for that other person, to try to support them, to inspire them. But I think that you're going to get a little bit into codependent manipulation, where you're you're trying to force them into happiness. What on the alternative, you could say, here's a bunch of healthy habits that I could be as a good partner, that have good boundaries, that are easily sustainable, that are, giving out of the overflow, that are still supportive, sacrificial, loving, good partner stuff to do, but also just providing the energy and space for a healthy relationship. And they could either choose to accept it or not. Awareness of a higher power. Yeah. I have come to the revelation recently that I was using anger and sarcasm to not feel sadness. By the way, very masculine of you, because that's a very common man mistake. We do that a lot. And now that I have accepted that part of me, will it inevitably begin to change? Yes, absolutely. Okay. So what is that change going to look like? If you are aware of the tendency, accept that tendency, it now can start to become manageable. So you spot the anger and the sarcasm a lot more, and you're aware that underneath is really sadness. So, I mean, obviously, you can still choose to be angry. Wait, I'm going to be less masculine, less toxic masculinity for sure, more true masculinity. But anyway, then you can still choose to be angry and sarcastic, but then you'll just increase your anger and sarcasm, right? But more likely and hopefully what you do is you are aware of it and you go, oh, I'm really feeling sad again. Okay, cool. Now the next step of acceptance is to allow myself to feel that sadness. And that's going to come with a lot of tears. It'll come with some mess. But in the end, when you've gone through the mess, you get to the message. When you've allowed yourself to actually experience those emotions that feel inconvenient, maybe even unnecessary, they usually have some real great wisdom behind them. So allowing yourself to just mope, sit in that sadness. Now, you don't have to do it to the detriment of everything else. You can schedule it. Like literally, that's an exercise that I love, is scheduling the sadness. You can have windows and ways and rituals to experience that sadness. But as you do that, you get better and better at dealing with that sadness. And the more you deal with that sadness, the more you find yourself losing that anger and sarcasm, because the more you develop skill towards expressing that sadness, the less you need to cope with anger and sarcasm. So the anger and sarcasm drift away. And that's like a really common thing that people are like, they think they have an anger problem. So they go to anger management. And don't get me wrong, there are some really good anger management programs that do deal with the emotional root of the issue. But many of them do not, because they focus on tips and tricks to try to like cope with your anger and are not actually getting to the root of the problem. So it's not really going to help long term. You might have some good methods for when you're feeling anger to not punch someone in the face, but you're going to be struggling with anger for the rest of your life until you get to the inner story of what's going on internally with that anger and start to deal with that at its core. All of life is a stage, and the irony of sadness is always a comedy. Joe Purnell. Philosopher detoxifying masculine coach. I love that. That's funny. Yeah, so the irony of sadness is that sadness is a product of a well-lived, well-loved life. And if you really think about it, it makes sense, but you've got to keep thinking about it, right? Um, in this life, the more you understand how to love, the more you will experience the feeling of sadness. It's like empathy is such a great gift. It's such a powerful tool that always comes with sadness. It can't not, because when I'm connected with other people and their emotions and their feelings, that's going to cause more feelings, right? They say in the rooms, the wonderful thing about AA is that when you stop drinking, you start having your feelings, and then the thing that sucks is you have your feelings. It's a double-edged sword, but the most engaged life that we can live is one of feelings. It's like, duh, like we were given them for a reason. Feelings are not our enemy. They are a part of a healthy life. I was just talking with one of my friends who is studying to become a life coach, and we were talking about different books. And one of them was a book that was super popular for a while, still is pretty popular. And I won't actually say the name because it's an F word and I can't swear here, I think. But anyway, it's The Subtle Art of Not Giving a, bleep or whatever. And it's like, we were talking about it, and it's like, it really should have the opposite title. Like if it was going to be healthy on a mental health letter, it would be The Subtle Art of Giving a crap, right? That's the best life we can live. If we have the subtle art, so it's still subtle, right? There's still a lot of nuance to it, but figuring out how to care about the right things in the right way. That's why it's subtle, because you have to care about the right things in the right way. But that's the key to life, right? Is figuring out how to care so deeply about the things that matter most in life. And the more you learn how to care about those right things, asterisks, right? It has to be the right things in the right way, the better you will live your life. And so the mastery of this life is actually not caring, it's caring. And unfortunately, what is the fantasy that a lot of people fall into in this kind of jaded society and world that we live in is trying to do the not subtle, overt, not art trolling, the overt trolling of not giving a crap. Like that's basically what our society has fallen into psychologically, is this kind of like pseudo maturity, right? This face of maturity that is saying, well, I don't even care. Like we think maturity is not caring when people insult us. And look, even if we don't let it destroy our own self-worth because it's secure, we still as empaths should feel bad that that person is still trapped in a world where they are in a negative space and trying to insult others. Right? So even on even if I'm in this kind of like, hopefully not a condescending, judgmental way, but if it's kind of like this, man, I'm so sorry that the person is still in that trap, that they're thinking it's me versus them, and they're trying to beat me, or thinking that they need to make themselves feel better by making me feel worse or something like that. Even that, it's like, oh, that's sad that they're stuck there, right? It's still caring, right? But we say, oh yeah, no, I don't care what other people think about me anymore, as if it's a badge of honor and a sign of courage. Now, we should have boundaries. We should decide who we are going to let in our spaces. But ultimately, the way we want to move forward is a way of really deeply caring about the right people in the right way. And I think that's, a huge part of the key to happiness. That's why we can laugh till we cry. I mean, like, the best experiences in my life have had laughter and tears right there interwoven. And sometimes it's been, quote unquote, happy tears, but sometimes it's been sad tears, and it's kind of irrelevant. When laughter and tears meet, that's an important moment in our lives. And if we are getting stuck in a way where we're not allowing ourselves to feel either of those two, we've got a real problem. I'm a stoic empath. I feel nothing but for others. Doesn't make any sense. Uh, you can't feel nothing for others. But I think you're just enjoy the wordplay sometimes too much. So we covered a lot of ground today in talking about random different subjects, but all mental health related very directly, on understanding that the best we can live. Yeah, it was a trolley comment. I'm glad you're aware of that. The best we can live our life is being an individual, right? Being unique. That's a good thing. And being aware of how our stories from our childhood have made it hard for us to do it can really help us to rewire it. I mean, going to your statement earlier, that person I'm not calling out in the chat, but you know who you are, because you always think everything's about you. Just kidding. But anyway, you were saying that you let anger and sarcasm be your go-to instead of sadness to cover it up. And it's like, well, yeah, of course, the culture in which you were raised made anger seem like it was a strength and sadness seem like it's a weakness. So it makes sense that there's that lack of balance. But the reality is the opposite. And again, going back to that truth, honestly, is that the most beautiful moments in this life are when we laugh and cry. Why wouldn't you want a life filled with it? Right? Those engagements with things that matter and are beautiful, and where you have laughter and tears as a regular part of your life. And if you don't want that, then you've probably felt unsafe for a long time in your life. And that's okay, right? But it's like, okay, so then what do we do next? We've got to start working on that wound and providing a space that you can feel safe. And you might need some time. You might need to go through some big periods of rest and reflection, but eventually the goal should be getting to a place of love and laughter and sadness and laughter, right? Tears and laughter. And the route to that is not always straightforward. So that's one thing. It's like sometimes the route to deep connection does have solitude, because you have to just reset. I mean, honestly, even for me, that was part of this walkabout trip. I mean, this trip kind of just happened to me more than I chose it. I mean, eventually I kind of chose it, but like every once in a while have to disconnect, to reset, to get into the right rhythm for my life. And it wasn't like anything was going bad or I wasn't happy, but I was just losing some intentionality with my rhythm. And I knew that getting away would help me to restart that. And finding different ways to do that is a good thing. So live, laugh, love thing is applicable advice. Yes, but not in the way that woman talked about. No, that's not live, laugh, love, is it? What is the book that was like eat, pray, love, or whatever? Just, not that author has got some red flags. So I don't highly recommend eat, pray, love, but I guess that's different from live, laugh, love. Yeah, live, laugh, love. Live life to the fullest and do what matters. Laugh and cry and deeply love. Yeah, or red flares. Yeah, for some it's been flares. All right, so that's about the time we've got for us here. And I'll answer any immediate last questions, but we've actually had a lot of questions today. So with that said, please come with your mental health questions, even if it's just for a friend, and invite other people to the chat. Let them know about this. And if you're watching this on YouTube and it's not Sunday evening, just so you know, we do these every Sunday at 7 p.m. Eastern time to 8 p.m. And we would love to have you join us for the chat. So we're here just to provide a little bit of health, a little bit of mental health discussion, and hopefully we keep taking steps forward and keep growing to be the best version of ourselves. So I am a therapist, and my practice is True North, located in Vero Beach. Ninja Turtles are cool. I like turtles too, especially Ninja Turtles. And if you need therapy, I'm happy to provide that. But if you can't afford therapy, this channel might help you along the way, and I'm happy to support you in any way that I can. All right, with that said, I love you guys, and I'll see you next week. Cowabunga, dude. Love it.